That. Can't be this. I would like to thank everybody for coming out to our first ever webinar done by the WES Foundation. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors who's supported us throughout the years, and especially today's sponsor, which is Clear Air. Clear Air brings advanced filtration that removes microscopic particles from the air at a lower cost. Protect your home and your family from harmful particles with Clear Air filters. And now, Clear Air filters masks are available to the best protection against deadly viruses like the coronavirus. Learn more at cleerair.com. This weekend has been, for the last 3 years, the weekend of the annual football and cheerleading camp put on by the WES Foundation. We were looking for another record-breaking attendance at camp this year, but COVID-19 had other plans. Our goal at the WES Foundation is that we can get kids to understand that they can be successful without being a professional athlete. And we want to help them, equip them for life after sport. We want everybody to chase their dreams and hope they can make it to the professional level, but also give back to their communities. But eventually, there will be life after their sport. To help give our youth tools to prepare for life, we started our Success Beyond Athletic Seminar Series. We plan to do seminars on social media, financial literacy, etiquette, and of course our topic of the day, mental wellness, among other things. Since this camp is camp weekend, and we can't have camp, we thought we'd still bring something to the community. So we put together a great panel. We wanted to talk about something that affects everyone in one way or another. Our topic today is how mental wellness affects athletic performance. I once heard one say that if you aren't mentally ready for competition, you can never be physically ready. Our goal today is to have a conversation about how mental wellness impacts how one plays on any given day. Allow me to introduce our panelists. We have Torrey Davis, Pshanda Pugh, and Dr. Winston McIver. I'm going to allow each of them to tell a little bit about themselves and touch on our topic for a few minutes. Then we'll open it up for a few questions and further our conversation on the ties between mental wellness and excelling in athletics. Torrey, if you don't mind, could you introduce yourself and start us off?
All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this evening, and thank you, Coach Sands, for inviting me to speak. Again, I am Torrey Davis. I am a senior human resource professional, a well-being professional, and also a well-being consultant. Today, I want to briefly discuss the importance of student athletes practicing soft skills and developing backup plans as an alternative to becoming a professional athlete. Additionally, I will connect the impact backup plans and soft skills have on mental health. The reason I want to speak to you all about practicing soft skills and having a backup plan is because I myself am an ex-athlete, and I know the importance of having a backup plan and practicing soft skills, which has allowed me to navigate through difficult situations in life. First, let's define the term practice. Practice is the repeated performance of an activity and or skill in order to improve or maintain one's proficiency. As an athlete, you practice your skills for football, basketball, or whatever sport or activity you desire to excel in. For example, for football, you may have a peer, a coach, or a parent throw you the ball while you are practicing catching so you can become more skilled at catching a football. Or you may play basketball. You may shoot free throws to develop a better shooting form, which will enhance your jump shot from other places on the court. Essentially, practice allows muscle memory to occur and provides a sense of confidence that reduces anxiety and stress come game time. Next, I want to define the term soft skills. Soft skills are personal attributes that enable someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. I pulled my soft skills from Dr. David Jeremiah's book, A Life Beyond Amazing. The soft skills I will list today are not an all-inclusive list, but they are living a life of love, living a life of joy, peace, endurance, compassion, generosity, integrity, and self-discipline. I cannot detail each of these soft skills during this webinar. However, I can at a later date if you request my information from Coach Sands. The takeaway is that you must practice these soft skills the same as you practice skills for sports and other activities in order to improve how effectively you use your soft skills. Practicing soft skills improve social relationships with your peers, thus helping you develop healthy relationships which impacts mental health in a positive manner because you would learn how to effectively communicate, work well under pressure, make better decisions, and develop the ability to be flexible with what life throws at you. These soft skills filter into developing a backup plan to the challenges that life will bring to you. Simply put, a backup plan is a strategy that is in place just in case your original plan fails. Backup plans do not mean you will not reach your dreams or your goals. In some cases, backup plans allow you to create new pathways to reach your dreams or your goals. In other words, changes in life will happen that can derail you from reaching your dreams and can create a sense of fear, anxiety, and stress due to uncertainty. However, being flexible could allow you to work well under pressure and make better decisions, which can reduce anxiety and stress. Also, backup plans will reduce the likelihood of developing depression due to the seen and unforeseen changes that can occur in life. A backup plan will allow you to have an alternate dream sometimes that will allow you to continue to still have a purpose in life. So if you're dreaming of becoming a professional athlete, if that does not happen, having a backup plan of something in life that is meaningful to you, that you want to pursue, still provides you with a sense of purpose. To sum everything up, it is important to practice soft skills such as compassion, generosity, integrity, and especially self-discipline, which is no different than how you would practice for a sport or a desired activity that you want to pursue and excel in. Remember, practicing soft skills could allow you to develop good communication skills, work well under pressure, make better decisions, and have the ability to stay flexible, thus reducing anxiety and stress. Practicing soft skills also allows you to build healthy relationships with peers, thus aiding in the development of mental health characteristics that are resilient. Lastly, developing backup plans can reduce stress and anxiety and minimize the chances of you becoming depressed. Creating a backup plan allows your mental health to be impacted in a positive manner. This concludes my segment for this afternoon, and I will hand the mic back to Coach Sands.
There you go. Thanks, Torrey, for that. Pshanda, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Pshanda Pugh. I am a licensed professional counselor with life transition Transitions Wellness Center. I'm the owner operator of the facility. I have several years of experience working with families and children, trying to help them work on their mental health and their mental wellness. When we talk about being a counselor, that's something that's starting to be talked about more now. Counseling is more of a service that's accessible now. When we're talking about counseling, we're talking about having someone that can offer you the opportunity to talk, share, get insight about how to address your needs when it comes to depression, anxiety, feelings of anxiousness, feelings of being alone when it comes to grief. My office is named Life Transitions because that is something that we all go through. We all have things that occur in our lives which cause us to have a little bit of distress sometimes, or sometimes we need people to lean on. We need someone to talk with. That situation, sometimes when we can't go to our family, we don't feel like we're comfortable going to our friends. It is good for you to reach out to someone like myself, who is a licensed professional, who is there to help you and aid and guide you into making good decisions. With the office, some of the services that I provide mentoring. I do provide one-on-one psychotherapy. We do family counseling, marriage counseling. I address several different situations and illnesses that may come up. One of the big things that we're seeing a lot of, especially during this time, as we're seeing a lot of people coming in, as kids are getting out of school and graduating and deciding to move on to college or into the business and career world, making these transitions and making these decisions, needing someone to help guide them and make sure they're on the right track. Another thing that comes along with being as a part of a mental wellness professional is helping people understand what goes on in their minds, what causes me to think a certain way or causes me to feel a certain way, and what things I can do to actually get those things under control. Sometimes when we have people in situations such as athletics, and they're under high stress situations, there's pressures that come up, and we always need to have someone that we can trust and someone that we can go to that can help guide us to make better decisions and make right choices that are going to impact our lives. If you have any questions, please feel free. I think my information is going to be posted on the screen, and you can reach out to my office to schedule an appointment if you have any additional questions to ask, and I'll be happy to step in and give you whatever assistance I can help you with.
Thank you, Pshanda. Appreciate that. And Dr. McIver, you're no stranger to these airways, especially with all the things that's going on from the COVID standpoint, but we're going to try to hit you on a different aspect, and let's just talk about the mental wellness piece for a little.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. I've been working with athletes now for over 25 years, starting with University of South Carolina, doing my residency, internship days, Torrey County Schools as a consultant, primarily with concussions and head injuries. Coastal Carolina I've been with for the past 18 years, working closely with the school as an athletic medical director, working with the Big South Conference, the Sun Belt Conference, and the NCAA. So I've been working with athletes for a long time, just on a collegiate level, and I kind of work my way through athletics in general. But on a collegiate level, there's a big emphasis now on mental health and mental health wellness. Each of the Division I schools have been assigned a task of having a mental health director for the athletic department, which is what I do for Coastal as well. So mental health is something that I'm very big in, something that I do believe is very important to help athletes not only function athletically, but also to be able to function academically. I also have a certification in sports counseling. Now, just to talk a little bit about sports counseling versus sports psychology, sports psychology has been more widely known, and that functions with trying to help the athlete perform better. That's sports psychology. Whereas sports counseling is trying to understand why that athlete is underperforming in the first place. And so that's the avenue that I primarily come from. And so in doing that, there are a number of reasons why the athlete may be underperforming. It may be a depression issue, an anxiety issue. It may be a sleep deprivation issue. It may be that the person may have not made the right decision in their mind. They're questioning where they are and was this the right school choice? But specifically, and this kind of gets along with what Ms. Pshanda was saying, and one thing that I'm the most interested in this facet is the transitions. A lot of times young people will have issues as they transition from one phase to the next, whether it be from high school to college, college to profession, and whether or not their termination of their sporting career ends or whether it persists to some degree. Because as you said, Brother Everett, everybody's career is going to end at some point in time. I think one of the big issues that most athletes have is understanding that that's going to happen and to prepare themselves prior to that happening. Now, transitions can be for any number of reasons. Once you're, let's say in high school or in college, whether it be having to transition because of an injury that the athlete may have sustained and how to transition back to performing well, or whether or not they had to terminate their participation in sports based off of their injury. They have to transition from not playing as much. You may go from rec league to high school, where in rec league you were, an all-star superstar, but when you get to high school, you may not be the man, so to speak. And then certain going from high school to college, where these high school athletes will see their name in the newspaper every Saturday morning, and then they get to college and they may not play, or they may redshirt a year, or they may get injured. So transitioning is a very important part of athletics, sports performance, because if you're not transitioning well, you can certainly have issues with depression, anxiety, issues with flunking out of school or underachieving grade-wise, as well as athletic-wise. So those things are very important. Transitioning, making sure you have a good support staff to make sure that these athletes do understand that, and they're not necessarily being identified solely as an athlete. Working at Coastal, I've had the opportunity to work with Olympians, professional football, baseball, soccer players. And so people that have been high achievers, but even with them at some point in time, their transition to termination of sports will occur. So I think this is very important to deal with transitions and not have the athlete identify solely as an athlete, but as a student athlete, a person who just happens to excel in one or two or whatever given sports.
Appreciate that. Just want to remind everybody, regardless of which Facebook venue you're watching it from, if you have questions, then please feel free to type them in and ask away. So now we're going to get more into the conversation piece of this. And the first question that I have is, I think we see a lot of times where parents sort of put a little pressure on their kids to do well at an early age. I hear a lot of times out on the rec league field that there's a lot of pressure on kids. So sometimes it's parental pressure. I think sometimes it's pressure from their peers. And then sometimes it's kids putting a lot of pressure on themselves. Again, Torrey, we'll start with you. What do you think? How do you think that affects their athletic performance with that pressure, whether it's outside pressure or pressure they put on themselves?
I've seen positive returns from parental coaching pressure and pressure that children may put on themselves. And I've also seen the negative side of pressure from coaches, parents, and the pressure that children put on themselves. I actually mentor every once in a while at an elementary school in the area. And I have seen how failure on the football field or any athletic event has transcended the child to feel like they're a failure in other areas because they weren't performing on the field. And so we as support systems, parents, coaches, teachers, peers, we have to be careful of the pressure that we place on children In my opinion, first and foremost, especially with rec league, you're there to learn, you're there to have fun. And you're there to learn larger concepts of being a team player and what it means to work in a team. Yes, we want to win. Yes, you want your child to win. Yes, you want your child to succeed. But then what is success? Is success the winning, or a success that that child is learning how to work well with others? They're learning how to communicate with other children. Those are larger skills and concepts that sports teaches children that I think parents need to focus on more, and coaches and their peers, instead of the pressures of performance. That will come, that you can always work on technique. You can always work on technical skills. And that's why I spoke on soft skills today, because it's very important to practice those. You're going to get technical training no matter what your field is of study, or where you're working, or what sport you're playing, or anything. You're always going to get technical training, but it's hard for people to get that soft skill training that helps them transition from one phase to the next, that helps them understand circumstances that they're going through. So I think parental impact coaching pressures, I think they play a huge role in how children and athletes themselves, young athletes, see themselves.
Does anybody else want to chime in on that?
In sports counseling, we call that achievement by proxy. And basically what that means is parents living through their child's endeavors. In other words, the parent may be continuing their legacy, quote unquote, continuing their love of the sport through their child. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's channeled in the right way. If it's channeled in the right way, then it can be definitely a positive reinforcer for the child. If it's positive, if it's channeled in a negative way, it can definitely have negative and adverse effects on that child and their self-esteem, and ultimately their achievement and their ultimate love for the sport.
Now, one of the things that I truly believe is kids at every age want to win. Mm-hmm. They know the scoreboard. A lot of times with the younger kids, they don't have the score up for the soccer game, but I guarantee you those kids know who scored more. So on one hand, we know there's some importance to trying to win. But at the same time, that pressure can also affect them as well. Pshanda, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, one of the things that comes up when it comes to having so many people in a kid's ear, it creates sort of a frenzy effect, because what they're dealing with is they're trying to actually handle what they're getting information from several different angles, and having to understand, especially once they get to a certain level, if they're, a collegiate level and they're actually performing well, and figuring out whether these people are there for them, knowing what the background for that is. Are you here for me because of who I am, or are you here because of what I do? And having to be able to identify that. Also, people do a lot of talking and put a lot of pressure on kids, and they're not sometimes aware or paying attention to the fact that the kids are picking up a lot of silent gestures and unsaid kind of indirect things. So that can lead to a lot of eating disorders, especially if you're an athlete and your weight is a big concern, and that's something that people are paying a lot of attention to. And it's not because they're trying to create that issue, but if it's always the topic of discussion in the background, it's always something that's being commented on, that creates a psychological effect. We also see a lot of depression, because I feel the weight of my family. I feel like I'm letting everybody down. If I don't succeed, then therefore somebody's going to be upset with me. They're going to be disappointed. There's so many other things that come along with it. People don't really think about that. Everybody likes to talk about the glory and the glitz of being the star, but nobody really thinks about the pressure that comes along with being the star. and the things that follow along with that, because then everybody starts to kind of grab onto your coattail. And it creates a lot of extra mental stress that goes on with that, because you can't just be a success for yourself. You're a success for other people.
Right, right. You know, it's amazing how many young men that I've talked to. Was one of the things that I like to talk to my guys about is why. Why are you doing this? And so many of them, it's for their family. You know, they feel like I have to use this as an outlet so I can make it better for my family. Now, that sort of goes into my next question, because of, as you were saying, so many people are talking, and a lot of times you got to control the thoughts that's in your head, that conversation that you have with yourself. Now, how do those conversations with yourself affect you mentally, which it also is going to affect your performance? Pshanda, do you want to start on this one?
Positive self-talk, it has a lot of benefits. It can also undo your job. Once you get in your head, and you know, that's a conversation a lot of athletes start having with themselves, is when it's crunch time. Once you get in your head, you know, you can destroy everything, all the momentum you build up. So you have to kind of figure out how to control that. And that's where that mental fortitude comes in. Being able to kind of be able to pull yourself back, and, you know, instead of dwelling on the negative things, focusing on the positive stuff, because it can create where if you're automatically starting to think negative, it comes out in your performance. You're going to, you know, overthrow. You're going to, you know, get caught up. You're going to start thinking too much. Working with different sports teams and watching people in athletics, you always hear them talk about, you know, don't get in your head, because you become your biggest enemy. You know, your brain, your mind, it has the power to control a whole lot of stuff. And it can, just as much as it is good to help push you forward, it can also derail you.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of probably the first guy that really tried to get in people's head was Muhammad Ali. And that was his deal. I'm going to get in your head. But Dr. Mack, what do you think about the self-talk?
Well, I think it's good as long as it's positive reinforcement. Some people will have steps that they will do in their mind to complete the process, i.e. making a jump shot. Mm-hmm. My daughter's a basketball player, and we go through steps to try to help her become a better shooter. I'm about to tell one of our secrets, so I don't mind telling it because we're amongst family. But when she first started playing basketball just a couple years ago, the goal was to try to help her become a better jump shooter. Okay. I tried to simplify it as much as I could. Being a former basketball player, we won't go there. That's been a long time ago. But so we've got a thing that we say, and that I say to her, that's called the 3 F's. I'm giving a secret now. The 3 F's: footwork, form, and follow through. That has to be in her head. If she can get that in her head, she's going to make that jump shot more often than not. So it's 3 F's. So what I tell her, 3 F's, 3 F's, 3 F's. Or if I see her in a game where she may not be doing one of the 3 F's, I can yell out 3 F's. Nobody knows what that means. I guess people know now what it means, but that's what we do. So as long as there's a positive reinforcement that's in her head, that's in her mind, that'll help her complete the task, a step to complete the task, that's great. That's just for basketball. There may be some other mnemonic that a person may have that they can have in their head to help them complete whatever task, whether it be the step through when you're trying to make the pass, or whether it's the running back to know to put the arms up and tuck the ball, whether it be, you know, the baseball player to follow through with the swing, whether it's the golfer to make sure that he's coming through with the backswing. So everybody has their thing that helps them complete the process, as I call it. And so that in your head is okay. It has to be positive, though.
So one of the things I got to work on is in my golf swing. There's so many things going on. The self-talk on my golf swing is crazy. But Torrey, what do you have on this?
I'm going to have to agree with Dr. Winston. Positive self-talk, I think, is great. I use that when I played basketball and was shooting. It was square up, face the basket, square up, follow through. And every time I shot, that's something that I thought about. And even now, as a runner, just trying to stay healthy, when I'm running outside, I'm looking at mailbox. I'm running 3 miles. I don't want to concentrate on the 3 miles aspect. I want to baby step it. So I'm looking at short-term goals that'll help me reach my long-term. So positive self-talk, I think, is a great thing. But also you can talk yourself down a rabbit hole and into negativity. So learning how to balance your self-talk, I think, is very important. And learning when to cut off that negative self-talk, that doubt. In sports is don't focus on that last play that you just did. If you threw an interception as a quarterback, you don't come back on the field thinking about that interception. You come back thinking we're about to go down the field and score a touchdown. Well, that's still self-talk. So I think, again, self-talk in a positive manner is very powerful.
Good. Now, one of the big things I think about when I think of self-talk is when I'm playing short or third, and I'm like, hit the ball to me. Come on, I dare you. But that's another thing. But sometimes though, you get that bad hop, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, and all of a sudden you experience failure. So that's another aspect that I think is important from a mental standpoint. Is how do I address failure? It can go back to the self-talk, okay, shake it off and keep rolling. But Dr. Mack, excuse me, failure, how does that affect the mental state of an athlete?
Well, it can be definitely overwhelming and detrimental to success. One of the things that I do with the athletes at Coastal is we talk about mental imagery. You've got a person that may be going through a slump in baseball. You've got to imagine yourself hitting that ball. You've got to imagine yourself, mental imagery is what it's called in sports psychology and sports counseling, that you create an image that you are completing the task, whether it be a hole in one, whether it be hitting the game-winning free throw. You imagine yourself doing it before you do it. And then it's a repetitive thing. You continue to positive reinforce the positive mental imagery to say, I'm going to do this, but not just say I'm going to do it, see yourself doing it.
So that goes back to a lot of guys just sitting down before the game and just visualizing themselves making that great run.
Exactly.
But again,
making a block, the pulling guard coming around to get there before the running back gets there to kick that tight end out the way. I mean, the defensive end out the way. I'm sorry.
Hey, we knew what you meant, Doc. We knew what you meant. Pshanda, you have anything to add to that?
When it comes to, the idea of failure, I mean, we all struggle with that thought. We all struggle with that idea when it comes up. A big thing with it is also being able to have where your self-esteem is based at. So we don't dwell in that thing. We don't dwell in that place. Being able to pull ourselves up, being able to actually, when we start feeling like we're overwhelmed or we're feeling like we're failing, to have the right support system behind you to kind of help talk you through that so you don't get stuck in your head in that negative space, is being able to actually have another place to go into and pull from. That's where, people go to their spirituality. That's where they go to, positive imagery helps. A lot of different things are there that are helpful to you. You just got to be able to kind of expand that toolbox so that you don't get caught there and not want to dwell there in that space. A lot of us get caught on wanting to beat ourselves up when we make a mistake, but the lesson is in learning how to shake it off and keep moving instead of dwelling.
Now, one of the big things that I believe that failure isn't final unless you quit. But the other thing is you learn so much from making mistakes and failing. So to me, it's a part of life, but it's an opportunity to grow. But not everybody has that aspect. So it's from a mental standpoint. Torrey, how best do you get to that point where it's like, yes, I failed here or I made a mistake here. I got to learn from it. Some people struggle with that. How can they get to that point?
Well, you hit exactly where I was going. You have to sometimes redefine success. I mean, redefine a failure as success. And one iconic figure, Michael Jordan, he succeeded because he failed so many times. How many game-winning shots did he take that he actually missed? But he actually succeeded in hitting game-winning shots because he took the shot. And so redefining failure as sometimes you trying is not a failure. It's a learning experience, as you just stated. And if you can learn something in that moment, then you've learned maybe what not to do. That's success in its own right. And so when you redefine failure in the terms of success and what can you learn from it, or, hey, you know what? I wasn't scared to step up for the big opportunity. I wasn't scared to throw that long pass down the field. I wasn't scared to take that last second shot. And yes, I missed it. But you know what? I had the guts to take it. Next time, I might hit it. If you redefine it that way, then your failures can be a huge momentum builder for you and a huge confidence builder for you, and also a great learning experience.
You know, and I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit, just as a collegiate coach, a recruiter. That's part of why we like kids that play more than one sport. They've been in those pressure situations more than just in one opportunity. So, you know, as a football coach, I love a kid that's been at the free throw line when the game is tied and his free throws are going to win the game. Love a kid that's been in the batter's box when it's 3-2, there's 2 outs, and the winning run is on third base. So just those pressure situations, I think, help kids deal with other pressure situations when they come up, even though that pressure situation in the future might be something different. So now, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. And Dr. McIver hit on it a little bit earlier, just talking about how a lot of colleges and a lot of professional teams now have either a psychiatrist or some type of mental health professional that's on staff. Why is that important?
Well, because there's been more issues with mental health and wellness. Again, that is a big part of the NCAA right now in dealing with student athletes, is the mental health and wellness component. Whenever we have, NCAA meetings, whenever we have Sunbelt Conference meetings, that is something that's very important to make sure that there's somebody at the universities that are versed in those topics. Again, all Division I schools now should have a athletic mental health director. Again, like I said, at Coastal, that's one of the titles that I have at Coastal. And basically it does stuff. We do things to look at sleep issues. We talk about substance abuse. We talk about depression, anxiety. Matter of fact, every new student that comes into Coastal, I give them a depression and an anxiety screening test. And if they score a number that shows that they may have some issues with depression or anxiety, I have a meeting with them. And we kind of sit down and talk about what's going on and try and figure out, is this more of a transition issue where the person is just nervous about going from high school to college, or whether there's some real underlying issues that were going on even in high school. And sometimes when I talk to the athletes, sometimes that is the case, that there may be some unresolved issues that went on while they were in high school or even middle school, that they still were carrying the baggage, but because they were the star athlete, they had to put up this facade to keep going, to keep this image going up.
Now, Pshanda, do you think that, as he just alluded to, that at times the athlete sort of uses sports as an outlet to their issues that they may have from a mental aspect, and how can they overcome that, or how can they deal with that best?
A lot of times we have athletes who, the focus becomes on, the sport. So we can psych ourselves out. We can focus on that. We don't focus on what really is going on with us. So we start, shoveling that stuff away, sitting on it, holding it back. We overcompensate by, working out harder, by pushing ourselves harder in the athletic realm where we feel comfortable, because that's usually our safe space. That is the space where I know exactly what's going on here. I feel more control, as opposed to when you're in your regular life and you're having these depressive issues and these depressive thoughts and feelings. They focus there in what they feel control over, areas of control. So a lot of times what we need to do is, or what ends up happening is, we swallowed and we push stuff down so far to the point where we can't mask it anymore. We can't hide it anymore. And it starts to come out. And one of the things that we need to start being able to do is allowing people to have outlets where they feel safe to come out and talk about what is going on, and just not taking everything at face value. I mean, a lot of times people don't ever question what's going on with you as long as you're performing. As long as that athlete is performing, as long as we're getting the wins, I don't question what's going on with you. I don't check in to see how you're doing. I don't check in to see how you're feeling. As long as you're performing and you're giving me what I'm looking for, and we're checking off the boxes, I'm fine. And it doesn't really come out for a lot of people that they've been struggling with depression or they've been struggling with anxiety until things, the career ends. That we don't have, the sport to rely on anymore to kind of overshadow and focus on. And that's when all this stuff starts barreling forward. And it's been there the whole time. It's one of those things it's just been sitting there. But hey, I've been so focused on training. I focus on training. I don't have to focus on how I feel. We teach athletes to push through. We don't think about how we're feeling. We get the job done.
Now, Torrey, there's times, when I get upset, one of the things I like to do is to go work out. That sort of release some stress for me. But I guess as Pshanda is saying, that's not enough for some. Or is it just that it's getting suppressed, that it's another time that it's going to come out? So Torrey, just sort of hit on that a little bit.
I, like you, if I have a little bit of stress or anything, I like to run, go work out. I'm done with it. But that's only one way to deal with it. There are several ways to deal with stress, and sometimes physical activity works for people. Sometimes people need music therapy so they can calm down by listening to different types of music that enact certain brain waves that can calm them down. Also, if something's growing in you and you don't address it, you're actually feeding it, even if you don't think you are. And the more you feed something, the bigger it gets. And so I think with athletes, they have this image that they have to live up to. And it's not even their image. It's the image of who they idealize sometimes, who they want to be like. And they're living in that space themselves, and they're actually not attuned to how they feel sometimes or what they think. They're so accustomed to pleasing everybody else. And like Pshanda said, nobody stops to ask what they want, or ever has stopped to ask what they want, or even thought about caring about what they want. And they've only cared about pleasing everybody else around them. So I think making sure that there are mental health facilitators with athletes, professional, even in middle school, high school, there's pressure there. And the younger that athletes learn to deal with these pressures and develop the proper coping mechanisms for them as they progress, yes, they're going to have new challenges, but they'll have some coping skills and they'll be armed with those coping skills to handle whatever challenges come their way from a mental standpoint and the pressures of performing. They'll be able to maybe speak up and say, hey, coach, look, this is going on right now. I know I need to perform, but I need you to listen to me about this situation, and I need some guidance. Because coaches, they're not just there to coach, in my opinion. They're there to also help facilitate growth from a personal standpoint. That's something that my high school coach did. He was a coach, but he cared about us more developing into men of character. He said it doesn't matter to him if we play professional or not. He wants us to have character, and that has stuck with me throughout my entire life.
Mm-hmm. Now, one, I think stress is a part of life. I mean,
It is.
there's going to be some good days and bad days. And whether you're an athlete or a non-athlete, it doesn't matter. Stress is going to be there at some point. You talked about some coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Pshanda, you can start this one off. Just what are some of the coping mechanisms that not just athletes, but anybody need to go on and just start thinking about developing in their life?
There's a lot of different things that you can do. You hear a lot of talk about self-care and taking time for yourself. A lot of us, we don't take time for ourselves. We are busy. We're on the go. That's a part of the craziness that this COVID pandemic has brought out. It's actually made people slow down and actually stop and have to start really kind of taking time for yourself and making a priority for what's important. One of the things I like to do for stress, and I've recommended to my clients, we're here, we had the pleasure of being at the beach, is go to the ocean, being in a tranquil space. Sometimes being in a space where you can kind of lose yourself for a moment is helpful. I tell my clients a lot, when we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling stressed, we go to the ocean, you put your feet in the water and you just stand there and you watch the ocean. You watch the waves come back and forth. And you have to kind of, breathe in and out with it. That helps control our breathing. It connects us back to earth. But also you have to take in consideration if God can have control over all this stuff and maintain the rhythm with the waves as vast as it is, then you have to have kind of a little bit of faith and understanding and knowing that what you're experiencing right now is really small compared to the vastness of the ocean. You can kind of let some of that stuff go out and take it back out with you. Aromatherapy is big. The ability for the different smells to kind of have impact to help reduce feelings of stress and depression and anxiety. I use it a lot in the office. People think, oh, wow, how can a smell have that big of an impact? But the different fragrances, the different smells that stimulate stuff in your brain, it actually does have really, therapeutic properties to it. Small things, getting massages, drinking hot tea. It doesn't have to be huge, great things. It's simple stuff. Torrey mentioned music therapy. Listening to music is a great stress reliever for a lot of people. It allows you to kind of distract yourself, relax, whether you need to dance, whether you need to move, for people who are trying to be more athletic, punching stuff, letting that energy go, release it out your body. Those things are very helpful. A lot of things I like to do with younger people is art therapy, paints, colors, drawing, just because sometimes we don't have the words to express what's going on inside of us. And feeling comfortable enough to kind of just put that stuff out there and throw stuff on paper. And you'll be surprised sometimes what you put on paper that you couldn't put in words and how much better you feel after you do that.
Right.
So those are good things. Also having, like I said, support systems are important. Support systems are really important to be able to have somebody you can go to and vent and kind of put it out there. Don't use social media as your venting source though, because that causes more stress. But actually having a person to stop and just be able to say it and be like, okay, you're not by yourself. Okay, we can handle that. Let's put it in perspective. It seems crazy, it seems overwhelming, but you know what? We can handle this one. Let me help you. I've been through that. We can handle that. Sometimes that's what we kind of need. So those things are really good tools to kind of help us de-stress and kind of handle what life throws at us.
Right. Okay.
Coach Sands, can I piggyback off Pshanda? One thing that I think is hard for us as people is to realize we don't control everything.
Exactly.
And if we stop trying to have so much control and sometimes realize, life is going to happen. We want to let life happen, but we don't want to just be loosey-goosey about it. We want to, facilitate some balance here. But having or desiring to have too much control ultimately leads to all this stress that we have. You know, we're trying to control an image of what the population thinks on social media. We're trying to control what's going on at work so we can hopefully get that promotion, and then we don't get that promotion. Just live your life and enjoy. Work on, you know, integrity, the self-discipline, the generosity, loving your life, living a life of joy. Work on those things, and you'll derive a sense of happiness from that, because you are taking care of yourself and those around you that you love and care about. And you're not worrying about controlling all of these situations that you really don't even have control over anyway.
Right. Now, I'd like to piggyback off of that too, but just switch it just a little bit. You know, one of the things that's been shown is that sports by itself doesn't automatically promote healthy development in athletes. There's something that's called pro-social values or pro-social skills, which develop positive, healthy attitudes and values that should be incorporated in what athletes are a part of. We do this at Coastal. I know a lot of other universities are doing it. But what these things do is they try to promote a good character development and more of positivity just outside of sports, but to make these athletes more of a well-rounded person. I know one of the programs like that is the First Tee program, which focuses not just only on the sport, but how to be a good sportsman. You know, that we're not going to win every time, but it's how we come back and adapt from that experience. You know, other things too is engaging these athletes in community service projects to understand, to develop more than just a sense of me, or even we with the team, but try to develop a whole community type atmosphere. You know, going to help out, doing community service projects. These kind of things help out. I know, you know, when Coastal's football first started, you know, the football team was really big with helping with Habitat for Humanity. You know, now a lot of the football players and athletes now at Coastal go out and read to the kids in elementary school. So trying to develop a well-rounded athlete will help these young people transition from one phase to another. But sports itself does not necessarily develop a healthy person.
Right. Now, last big question here. And I'm gonna go back to, you hit on it earlier, and I want to hit on it again. Just talking about transition. There's the transition from high school to college. It's tough because all of a sudden, you know, I'm used to being the big dog, and all of a sudden I'm just one of the dogs. And then it's even more so from the college realm to the professional realm. But the question is the bigger transition when I get out of sports or competitive sports? You still have opportunity to do some things. Because you see a lot of guys, once they get out of that, some of them, they go into a depressive state. You hear of some professional athletes that have taken their own lives. Let's just talk about that for a second, just that transition period from each phase.
Well, let's talk about it for a second, because that's big in what I do. And you're kind of hitting on a number of different topics right now that we may not have enough time on this show to talk about, but some of it having to do with concussions, repeated concussions, CTE, and some other things that may create some interpersonal problems post-athletics. But to look at it to answer your question specifically, I think the bigger issue is the transition to completing sports. Everything else can kind of fall in line after that, but this person has to see themselves not just as a college athlete or even a high school athlete. They have to see themselves as this being a part of the journey. Okay. Now you fill in the gaps on how you transition from high school to college. You fill in the gaps on how you transition each year during college, because how you actually perform in your freshman year may be different from what's expected of you of your sophomore or junior year. I mean, you may come in as a freshman or a sophomore doing really well, and then they bring in another recruiting class where somebody might come in and unseat you and move you from the starter or second string to third string. Or it may be that you get moved to a totally different position. And so again, I think that's a step during the process, but ultimately what you have to do is look at life after sports.
Right.
And when you start doing that earlier on, it builds a healthy self-esteem. It builds a more realistic outlook on what's going on, because a lot of people that come, whether it be the baseball at Coastal, which we had a lot of success, whether it be football, which we've had a lot of success, whether it be soccer, which we've had a lot of success, what have you, we have kids that are going to play professionally. This past year, 2 of our 4 graduating females on basketball team have signed professional offers to play overseas. We've had a number of baseball players here in the last week that's got drafted into the Major League Baseball. Of course, we've had success with football, with having a number of different athletes that were not only drafted into the NFL, but that actually made significant impacts, including being all-pro. So again, even with them, the transition of what do I do after sports is so important. And it's something that I tried to reinforce, the school tried to reinforce, to make sure that it's just not an identity of an athlete, that you are a human and that there's certain gifts that you can give other than being on a football field, a basketball court, or what have you.
Mm-hmm. Now, Pshanda, how early should we start thinking about life after sports? Of course, as an athlete, you never want to think about life. You think you're going to be able to play until you're an old man. But really, to prepare for that, how should we be thinking about it? How early should we be thinking about it?
Well, I want to piggyback off what Dr. Mack said is you have to have your own, establish an identity, helping your athletes grow into understanding they are people first. You know, being an athlete is part of who they are as a person. It's not everything. When you grow up and you create that whole identity around just you as the athlete, when that thing goes, then you're hit into a spiral, because who am I outside of sports? What do I have to offer outside of this? This is the only thing I've ever focused on. So it's good that we start from the beginning of making sure, like, you know, doing these service projects, being a participant, you know, not just being the person that's I'm the star and I'm the athlete and this is all I do. I help other people. I contribute. I have other skills and talents outside of being on a field. I have other skills and talents outside of being on the court. You know, you are who you are as a person. So it's good that we start from the beginning, that we don't lose that part of character development, of identity development, making sure that they feel comfortable as a person and focusing on being the person. And that's the important part. And parents have to drive that forward. You know, the coaches have to drive that forward. It's great that you're a star at this. It's great that you're good at this skill, but I like you as the person. It is who you are outside of that, because this thing is going to come to an end, whether it's by choice or whether it's just by, you know, your accident because you get an injury, or it's just a part of the phasing of you got older and it's time to transition on. It's what else can you offer, and who else are you besides just an athlete? That starts from the very beginning.
Now, Torrey, we're going to finish up with you, and I'm going to sort of put a little curve in there off of what Pshanda said. We talked about adjusting to or transitioning to life after sport. But there's one that she hit on that is not planned, you don't see it, and that's because of injury. So
that
talk
happened.
about that a little bit.
That has happened to me, where I've had my eye actually cut open by a fingernail, had to wear goggles, had my eye busted open 2 more times, and dislocated shoulder twice. But they said if my eye suffered another injury that I'd have to let it heal open, I'd have to have surgery. And so I had to make a choice then. Do I want to continue to play, or do I want to keep my eye? because evidently my eye was a magnet for things hitting it. That was a problem for me. I did not like that. So I chose not to play. That was an easy decision because I as a child, beginning at home, was exposed to other skill sets that I have. I knew that I could draw. I was an artist. I was in advanced placement art in high school. So I had other skills that I knew that I could fall back on or follow through, developing web pages, all kind of things that I knew that I could get my hands on and still be successful. And that kind of ties back into my original talking points of having a backup plan. I knew at an early age, middle school, that sports is not forever. And I was taught that. And I had backup plans in place, and I just kept changing them as I got older, as I started learning what I liked more, what I wanted to do. But I never lost my love for basketball. When I was in college, I helped coach a team. That was the new outlet. Instead of playing the sport, I was now coaching and facilitating learning of the game that I love, which became just as impactful, and I was just as passionate about as I was when I played. But I also had other avenues to express myself. I had other plans that I could follow that gave me purpose in life. And so that's why it's always key to make sure that as an athlete, you don't just focus on the sport. You don't just focus on your athletic achievements, because yes, that's nice. But one day somebody's talking about your athletic achievements, and the next day they're talking about somebody else's athletic achievements. And they may come back to you at some point, but eventually you phase out. So you need to be able to have other disciplines that you are that you have skills in, that you can give back to the community, give back to those around you. I think that's just very important.
Right. Everett, I'd like to piggyback on that a little bit. In the over 25 years of dealing with college student athletes, one of the toughest things that I've had to do is to permanently disqualify a student athlete. In that time, it probably has been close to 10 that I've had to permanently disqualify, whether it be from repeated concussions, whether it be from a career-ending injury, or whether it be because some abnormality was found by chance on a CAT scan that I did on an athlete. That is a tough situation. A lot of times because the transition that the young person should have had in their mind wasn't fully there. Mm-hmm. Several of them had chances to go on to play professionally. But again, because of, what I said to them and because of how I explained it to them, they understood that, this was for the best. And, but that's never an easy thing for me to have to do, is to sit down with a young man, young woman, and their family, because it's a family thing that we sit down and we talk about, and where it's permanent disqualification, and hear the reasons why.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's always a tough situation.
Yep, I've had to deal with that a couple of times. Now, again, we haven't gotten many questions from our audience, so if you all have any questions, please feel free to ask them as we get ready to wrap this up. But I remember just talking about the permanent disqualification. Had a young man that had several concussions, and the doctor told him, hey, if you have another one, you can still play, but if you have another one, you might have brain damage. And it was like, dude, you're not playing anymore. I am not going to allow you to play for me anymore. I want you in 10 years to be able to play with your kids. He was like, Coach, I want to play. No, you're not. And, he eventually understood, and he became one of my best student coaches I've ever had because of his love for the game. But it is important, and that is tough for a lot of kids. And, for me, one of the things, I still love competing. So every opportunity I get, I'm trying to compete. Torrey, you talk about you like to run. I'd rather chase a ball around a racquetball court for 3 hours and run for 20 minutes. But so I don't know if the competition part of you will ever leave. But one of the things that we were talking about was how doing community service is so good, and that's one of the things that I love about what we're doing here at the WES Foundation. We started 4 years ago, and the premise is that we have a lot of guys that played with me and guys that played for me that come back and be the coaches. And it's amazing how many guys look forward to coming back year after year, just so they can give their time. Because again, everything for our kids are free. We don't charge our kids anything, and we try to help out with if those guys want to stay the night over that Saturday night after the camp. We try to help them out, but everything is free, and those guys enjoy spending time with the kids. And I think it's good for the kids to be able to see guys that are lawyers, guys that are doctors, guys that are businessmen. Some of them did have opportunity to play at the professional level. Some of them are still playing at the professional level. But it's an opportunity for them to see that, hey, they were successful. I can do that as well. And again, I just want to thank all of our sponsors throughout the years. I'm not going to start calling names because there's too many of them. But definitely want to thank Clear Air for being a major sponsor for us today. And definitely get a chance, go to clearair.com. Big thing that they want to do at Clear Air is make sure that you're protecting yourself. Because again, the HVAC units the filters were built to protect the HVAC units, and the Clear Air, they have filters that can protect you. But again, I want to thank all of my panelists. You all did a great job. Thank you all for coming out. And we will have some future webinars in the future. One of our plans is to do one on financial literacy. We're going to try to do that one about once a quarter. And we will come back to mental wellness again. But again, thank you all for coming. Thank you again for my panelists. Thank you all to all of our sponsors, the present ones and the ones in the past. And again, you all have a great night. And before we go, I want to make sure we emphasize that we want football season to come. So that means that everybody's got to do their part. Make sure you're wearing your mask. Make sure you're washing your hands, and make sure you're just not in huge crowds. And let's do what we can to get back to some form of normalcy. I don't think normal that we knew in the past is going to come back, but let's get back to something that is a little bit more normal. Again, thank everybody. You have a great night.